Hello, and good afternoon, or good morning, or good night, depending on where you are in the Shellverse. This is our second Mindmeld Live video podcast, streaming live on YouTube and recorded or wherever
Did we
podcasts
lose Cairo?
find you.
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, Cairo,
What's up?
I think we lost you right as you said this is our second Mindmeld Live.
Oh no. Okay, well, the recording will be clean. And for our live folks, that's just the cost of being here in the moment. As you can see, we have Hunter here, or Be Fresh HB.
Whichever one you prefer. Yeah.
Whichever. All right, from Offchain Labs, who are building Arbitrum, which you might have heard of. Hopefully so if you're here, because that's the way to get to Shell. We also, of course, have founder and chief economist Kenny White of Kenny Labs, building Shell Protocol, and myself, head of marketing, Kenny Labs, Shell Protocol.
What's up, everyone? Hunter, great to have you here, man.
Yeah, thank you, of course, guys, for bringing me on. It was a pleasure, I think, meeting you guys last year for the first time in person at the event in the city, and it's cool to be meeting again, online.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I always get this FOMO whenever anything is happening in New York. Any excuse I can use to get out there, I definitely take. But luckily we have Aliza. Shout out Aliza.
Oh yeah.
Kenny Labs business development on the ground at all times there whenever she's not jet setting, so she can hold down the East Coast side of things. You've met Aliza, right, Hunter?
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned the way we met, but it was like we were actually having like a like an Arbitrum meetup in the city, the first one that we did, and she happened to be at the same co-working spot that we actually held the meetup at. And it turns out she was actually talking to the team at the same time, and I just was like, oh my god, that's hilarious. We're hosting an event, So we pulled her from work actually to party with us. I apologize.
No, that
the first time we met her.
Actually is her job, believe it or not. So
Okay, good.
You made her look good. Thanks.
Great.
And yeah, man, it's crazy how years just feel like decades in Web3. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. Think about where we all were like 24 months ago.
So one question I wanted to ask you, Hunter, is as you might know, we're gearing up for our token. We're still kind of sort of drip feeding information and announcements about that. But given you guys, I mean, I don't know if our viewers have heard of the ARB token yet. It's just sort of made, just a minor splash on crypto Twitter. Do you have any, how has that experience been just from like going from sort of planning out like the airdrop and the DAO to actually like executing it and rolling it out, and then all the way from then to where we are today? Like, how has that whole journey been for you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, just to start off, like I'm not exactly how much I am allowed to even share, considering there's like the labs and the foundation now. But I'll obviously, yeah, I'll say whatever I can. But no, it's definitely been a journey. I mean, obviously, like, so I've been with the team for some background since before we launched Arbitrum 1. So back in 2021, it was like June or July. So like, I was one of the few people that cared about Arbitrum before mainnet was launched, before the token was launched, and all that stuff, which was nice. I still care about it today, of course, much like everyone else. But I think the really cool thing that's come out of all this, because frankly, there was a lot of different arms that came into actually, having the foundation be made, and obviously governance be distributed to like pretty much everybody at this point. I was more so on the community side, more so than the like engineering side or the even like the analytical part of it, because I know like a lot went into designing, who kind of should have been, I guess, deemed to receive like said ARB, when governance went live and all that. But I think the most important thing even now is the fact that like a lot of this stuff really is in the hands of like the people, including you guys, including Shell, and like some of like the classic like Arbitrum OG projects. So like I think moving forward, it's a really weird, because crypto is the only industry where this happens. But like, I'm really excited to have Offchain Labs not be the only team working on Arbitrum. Like, I think the protocol itself, which is insane, and obviously not be the only team that's deciding the direction in which it goes. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's kind of like the moment you've been waiting for. It's almost like, I don't know, I'm not a parent, but there are stages in parenting, where you sort of have to like let go of your baby, as they leave the nest and become their own being. And I think decentralization, it's like it's many hands, building this thing that started out very, very close to home. It's also, we've been talking a lot, because watching what you guys have just done, it's sort of a glimpse into how things are going to be for us, in X time. It's this question of like aligning the incentives of people who want long-term value for the protocol, and there are many ways to do that. We talked last time about the idea of like staking or like committing your tokens in order to increase your voting power. Was there a lot of discussion about like whether, one token, one vote, or what strategies to use beyond that as far as those thresholds as it was being set up?
I would say that, like, I think in the beginning there actually was like some discussion on like, should there be like, more than just like a token to governance to govern things? Should there be like, like a ERC 721? Should there be some other type of like governance mechanism put in place to like allow people to vote on the future of Arbitrum? I think though, like, maybe to describe it as best as I can, we approached it very similarly in the way we approach like what the team has been building for so long, and that's pretty much just focusing on like the core of the product. In that, for example, obviously, again, Arbitrum, like the chain has been around for a while. First it was the AVM, then it was migrated to Nitro later last year. Throughout all this time, we could have, I'm sure, made like an Arbitrum native wallet. We could have made we could have tried making different products that makes onboarding to layer 2s easier, right? I think a lot of this comes from like our strategy team, including AJ and the rest of the partnerships, and even just everyone who works on Arbitrum today, that like we never want to be competing with our ecosystem, right? And I think we kind of took that same approach when designing that governance process in the first place. Whereas like we don't want to start like kind of putting too much structure around a governance process or a system. Rather, let's like kind of build this like kind of bare bones but effective system that more or less has been proven to work and be around for quite some time by different protocols, but at the same time give the governance full ability to change and morph the way it wants to. So I'm not. If you ask around, I'm sure that people will even tell you that given the fact that Arbitrum's governance is essentially fully on chain, and even looking at the Constitution, the token holders to this day currently have like the power to do almost anything with the with Arbitrum 1, with Arbitrum Nova, and the chains in general. So that can include maybe like giving specific people or specific actors NFTs that maybe have a different representation, and how that controls the system. But generally, like, to sum it up, like, I think sometimes less is more. From the start, and kind of letting the ecosystem grow, just like you were saying, Cairo, as a kid would, but like helping guide a little bit. But frankly, there's so many smart people in this ecosystem that there's so many people that are able to help guide this thing, other than Offchain Labs.
Yeah, no kidding. How many of you are there at Offchain currently? It's got to be, feels like new people every day.
Got Offchain Labs. I think there's like 80 something people right now, but around 80. Which like I feel like depending on like how deep you are in Arbitrum, it may sound like a surprise. Like whenever I talk to people, I'm sure people think Arbitrum is almost as big as like a Polygon, right? But then even looking at the Arbitrum Foundation, for example, I think even they're a lot less, right? The foundation was just formed, whereas Offchain Labs was kind of like the company, pretty much the company that you guys have been speaking to, like, for all this time, and the one that actually really built the product, Arbitrum that we know today. But quite a good amount of people. But we didn't really start onboarding a lot, I don't think, until like probably mid last year, to be honest.
Cool.
So in terms of the Arbitrum DAO, what can the DAO do and what can't the DAO do, just from like not just from like a social standpoint, but from like a smart contract, or like sort of like, well, what's like the hard power, if you will, of the Arbitrum DAO, and what role does it play in the Arbitrum ecosystem?
I would say, like, corresponding, this is coming from like a community guy, right? Put it this way. So like the DAO, so as I mentioned earlier, the DAO is essentially able to morph in which any way it wants. And for an example, while there is, an Arbitrum DAO, there's also a security council, right? That has essentially the ability to make different changes to the protocol, such as upgrades, for example, without the approval of the DAO. Technically, if the DAO wants to, they can, and I say technically, they really can. The DAO can just vote to remove the security council altogether. Obviously, that comes with different pros and cons, but that's essentially saying that token holders have the ability to remove this multi-sig that currently exists that has the ability to upgrade the chain at will. Obviously, like that's speaking very literally, but like, that multi-sig should never really be used unless it's like a critical thing, right? Whatever that may be.
Yeah.
But I would look at it from that perspective.
We've got a lot of people. I guess the thing is to Photoshop toucans either around or over our heads currently. Kenny, you and I have been subjected. Guys, put some toucans on Hunter.
Yeah, what's going on?
To us, yeah.
Yeah, equal opportunity.
And also requests for toucan-themed Aloha shirts. Maybe we should look into that, Kenny.
Yes.
Pretty good.
I feel like I can't remember when I was somewhere recently and I saw someone with a toucan on an Aloha shirt with a toucan on it, and maybe it was maybe it appeared to me in a dream, but I could have swore I saw someone IRL with a toucan themed Aloha shirt, and I gotta track that shirt down because
track it down, man.
That would be the perfect. Swag. Start handing out. We're too.
This balance of like very serious financial / finance and politics, kind of two of the driest subjects by stereotype, I think, at an intersection here in DeFi. And yet there's this element of whimsy in the way that the community takes and runs with these elements that I think just makes it seem like the opposite of dry. I don't know of anywhere else exactly like it. It's pretty cool.
I mean, for what it's worth too, like, I think Shell is like the perfect example. I mean, I can remember, I think it was 10 days ago, a year plus 10 days ago was when you guys launched the toucans. I remember that was supposed to be an April Fool's joke. And the reason why I remember that so well is because that was the same day we actually sponsored the Columbia's hackathon in the city. And I was literally just going around telling people, yo, guys, they just released free NFTs. Make sure you mint them. And I think that was actually the most minted NFT, I think, on Arbitrum at the time. It was like 40-something thousand, if I remember correctly. I don't know why I remember all this stuff, but it's very memorable.
I think the stat that we were bragging about, because, you get one number that makes you look good, you're going to run with it for a while. And what we said was since the launch of Arbitrum, that was the single day with the most onboards by far.
Right.
We added something like 3% to the total wallets with that mint, which was fun. And honestly, I include myself in hundreds and hundreds of people who were not only joining the Shell community for the first time, they were also experiencing Arbitrum for the first time, and they were going, "This is so fast. This is so cheap and so fast. Wow." And they were like complimenting us.
They gave us the credit.
We're like, They were like,
that's
wow,
perfect.
your app is so fast. And we were like, thanks. But also, it's really just the block rate. Thank Arbitrum.
Hilarious.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
So that was cool to like have that collective moment.
Well, we kind of had like a multi-purpose for the Toucan launch. Like one of them was, just doing something fun. That was a primary one. But also we were like debating at that point, like where we wanted to deploy the Shell app. And, we didn't think, we thought we wanted to probably not do mainnet because gas was just getting too expensive. And we're not rich enough to pay like $10 on transactions. And we figure our users probably are going to feel the same way. So we're like, okay, well, where do we go? Is like Polygon, Optimism, I think like Solana. And we're like, well, Arbitrum, I remember we talked to you guys almost a year before the Toucan launch. We talked to you guys, and I walked away being very impressed. But it was like kind of very technical presentation, and I was like, oh, damn, these guys are legit. So I was like, guys, let's just try Arbitrum. Let's just try the Toucans on Arbitrum, see how we like it. And then it went viral, and we were like, and like the UX was just so good. We're like, all right, well, we're freaking Arbitrum now. You made us into believers off the first experience.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like from the start, the Toucans was supposed to be kind of like a joke. But I think it's at some point you guys are like, we have to like integrate this somehow to the main product.
Yeah, I mean, with or without like a DAO vote. I think if you've got your finger on the pulse, if you're paying attention to your community, it's sort of like a dance where you really let them lead in that they make a meaning out of something. And even if it's a completely speculative meaning, you have to deliver on that. I don't know. I also, like, I come from an entertainment background as well. And, if there's something in your show that fans just latch onto, even if it's like almost a mistake, or just like an extra who catches people's attention, if that becomes like the defining meme of the show, you need to address that. You need to sort of lean into what's important to the viewers. And I think that community made the Toucans real, through their power of belief. And now they very much are. Which also, leads into the question of where is the place for Toucans in governance once there is a governance token. And this is something we've talked about before, but it's a question we'll answer together, I think.
Indeed. Speaking of like memes and stuff and community, like I feel like Arbitrum started out as a very like serious like technical project, and as it's gotten more adoption from like the broader crypto ecosystem, it's almost like the atmosphere around Arbitrum is like changing to being I don't know, like it's still there's still that very serious technical core and foundation. Let's just say it's almost like you see like a lot of companies like get old and like more conservative, but like almost like Arbitrum is almost like the Benjamin Button protocol, where it's like getting more and more like hip and cool. Like, how is that? I mean, how do you feel about like the changing atmosphere of the Arbitrum community, and like what's that experience been like for you?
Oh man, that's such a funny question. I feel like when I first joined, like as I mentioned earlier, like before Arbitrum went live, that was around the same time when like people kind of thought that, like, because Ed had kind of hinted at it, that like maybe Arbitrum and Chainlink, this would be some sort of like Chainlink chain or something. The base fee would be like a link token, and I don't know, some crazy thing. And like, so the time the Discord was literally like unmonitored because there was no community manager or any partnerships people. It was just a bunch of link marines just ship posting.
Yeah.
So Arbitrum and Offchain Labs, it's always kind of been a meme, but like I think when I had joined, I remember like the team was only 13 people, so it was only myself and like mostly just engineers, maybe like one, obviously AJ on strategy, and pretty much just engineers. So the atmosphere there, like while everyone was, and most of the people that were there are still here now, while everyone was like so friendly and like so welcoming, I wanted to keep that meme nature, right? Because to your point, like it's like, obviously, like to grow a project, to grow a business is hard, but to grow that same thing, but and also keep the same like kind of energy, keep the same vibe that you had when you were a 13-person project with those shit posters in the Discord is tough.
It is tough. I was around there, number 12 or 13 at Niantic Labs, way before Pokemon Go.
Oh wow!
And got to ride with them up to a few hundred, and they're you have to fight to stay. I don't want to say fun, but like have that sense of internal adventure. I think, and so far it seems like you guys are doing a great job keeping that. So
it's funny too, because I think like another part of it was like when we started the Odyssey last year, like to your point earlier, like that was actually supposed to be this like kind of side project that like myself and Nina from our team, like I
remember you with your wheel on the Twitch live stream, and just getting so many more people than I could tell you expected to get.
Oh yeah. It's a meme. Like, to me, I'll be honest. Like, I've tried going about life the same way. But like to me, like there's no reason not to laugh at everything. You could have like the most cutting edge tech out there, but you should still be laughing alongside with the community and just having a good time. Because otherwise, I feel like once you start taking yourself too seriously, I don't know. Like, what's the point? Easier for me to say that because I laugh at everything. But
I guess. And by the way, community. If you have questions, please come to our Mindmeld chat channel on the Discord. I'm following along. You can get your role, but you can also ask questions of Hunter, of us, of anything you like. So if you're here live, go ahead and go to the Mindmeld chat channel in our Discord and let us know what's on your mind.
Yeah, and speaking of sense of adventure, is there anything that you personally are looking forward to in the Arbitrum like roadmap over the next month, quarter, 6 months, year, 2 years?
What's next?
What gets you freaking excited about what you guys? I know you guys are like all working super hard, and I know there's a lot of cool stuff coming. So what are you excited about?
I would say so. I know there's two main things that the Offchain Labs team has announced. Like one being the Arbitrum Orbit, which was announced same day as the governance stuff, which essentially is like the ability to build pretty much layer 3s using Arbitrum technology. The cool thing about that is that technically that's live today, and anyone can go ahead and do that. Obviously, I'm sure it's a lot harder than just pressing a button and doing it, but I know I find that pretty cool. But to be honest, I think what I find the coolest, which I have not seen yet on any other chain, is of course this assumes that once this technology is done, the community has to vote it in and all that stuff. Is stylus, so pretty much the ability to code in C, C++, or Rust, or I don't know, I guess any language of your choosing on Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova, and that to me like sounds so interesting. I mean, again, I'm just a community guy, but really what gets me interested about Arbitrum is just the fact that like the engineers here are working on such interesting stuff, and that to me is just insane. Like people will be able to pretty much make these applications that'll be able to interoperate with Solidity based applications on Arbitrum. It's insane.
Damn,
that I'm looking forward to. Dude, no idea. I'm just a cheerleader, dude. Like I'm just here cheering them on. But yeah, I don't know. That sounds insane.
That's another thing I'm really curious about because, I know you can minimize the community side, but I know how hard it is. I'm in there with you, and wrangling 40,000+ people on a Discord is certainly, you can be up until like 11 at night, just like, I know I'm like on my phone, like, oh, this guy needs help with the front end, like trying to go to bed. But you've been there a while. Obviously, you're quite senior. How, like, at the point you're at right now, how is that experience of like doing community work and guiding? Like, are you taking initiative on like events and things like that? Like, how much are you like low level, just in the grind with the chat every day, and how much are you like planning the next big event, etc.
So I used to actually be a lot more in the Discord chat, like back in the day, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
like nowadays I'm mainly just like more or less like I mean, my role is not community manager now; it's community strategist. So I'm like
Got it.
strategizing what the community should be doing. Huh? Pretty
And are
impressive.
you working with AJ on that, or like day
Yeah,
to
yeah,
day? Yeah.
yeah. I'm working mainly with AJ. I mean, AJ is so busy that like I'm lucky if I get the chance to talk to him. Playing. But
Man.
but no, yeah, no. He's like working with AJ and the rest of the strategy team is great though. Like we're focusing on a couple things. Like so, for example, this is the Columbia Hackathon that I spoke about last year. I helped get that going. This year, I'm doing the same thing. Really, just trying to show support as much as we can. From a community perspective, but on all fronts. Like, there's people in crypto Twitter that's community. There's people in our Discord. There's universities. There's of course teams. There's like different levels of community, and I think just making sure that we're hitting every last one of those and making sure that everyone is heard and has our attention essentially is really important. Because there are a lot of people that care about Arbitrum and scaling Ethereum. So to me, it's like in a way, I almost look at myself as like a glorified customer support, like customer service, which I enjoy. To be honest with you, like it's good to
Yeah,
see
I've
people
said that
happy
about
and
myself as
excited.
well.
Yeah,
And
dude.
it's
Like,
very
why
rewarding.
not?
It is.
Yeah.
Um,
It's rewarding when the product's working.
Right.
yes,
Yes.
that's true.
It's a good
Whenever
point.
there is like, whenever like there's like just like some fly in the ointment, and then like something crucial breaks for like an hour, it's a lot less. It's still rewarding work, but it's, let's say, a lot less fun and enjoyable.
Oh yeah, I hear you. I mean,
Well, you got some wind going, Kenny.
Oh, do I?
Maybe just a touch. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're just sort of ready for the next chapter. It feels like with the token launch, obviously, Arbitrum has entered this very exciting new era, this new phase. And it definitely feels like, I don't know, I think the health of transactions and of engagement with the chain, especially post airdrop, has been really reassuring to a lot of people. As far as the future of the network, I've never expected anything different. But
dude, so many people. I can't tell you how many. I think it was mainly just people trolling, but I think some people actually
yeah,
believed it.
probably.
It's like post token, transactions are going to drop to like nothing. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess we'll see what happens.
I know you said you're not like in the dirt with the like social media as much anymore, but you ever get just like one hater who you almost develop this like parasocial relationship with because they comment on everything? I think we have one of those right now.
Oh my
And
god.
it's like they're it's weird. It's almost intimate. It's like if I felt the way you claim to feel, I would not be spending this much time like DMing us.
Well, I always find it flattering because I've spent a long time, trying to build something that anyone would care about. And like the worst thing is to just be ignored and have no one pay attention. And so whenever we get a little bit of hate, especially if it was something that like clearly like took a while to think about and like kind of like write up, I just take that as like a really one of the best compliments someone can pay you is to like write nasty things or heartfelt things that are somewhat mean-spirited, because man, I'm not doing that about most things in my life because I just don't have the bandwidth to care about too many things. And so I just find that deeply flattering. And my approach is usually like, this is clearly someone who cares a lot about what we're doing. Maybe we can take that frown and turn it upside down if we approach it the right way.
I guess
agree.
I have another question while we have you captive, Hunter. Just out of my curiosity, obviously looming under all of us, Shell and Arbitrum, is the EVM. This sort of genius infinite machine that secures all our transactions that we write to. And as Arbitrum and the foundation has grown and Offchain Labs has grown, do you guys find yourself like navigating a direct relationship with, with the Ethereum Foundation, with Vitalik, etc.? Like, or is it more of a distance? How has that changed?
Oh yeah, no, it's a good question. So I mean, I know, like more or less since the beginning, from my understanding, like Offchain Labs has had a pretty close relationship, but like I say pretty close, I mean like I've always conversed with the likes of some people from the EF, occasionally Vitalik, I'm sure, people like that. But I think of course as time goes on, especially post what's it called, the acquisition that we had with Prismatic Labs. That Offchain Labs especially is just getting more and more closer to, not only of course developing Arbitrum, but also helping with the development and fund the development, I guess in this case, of Ethereum. Because to your point, it's like without Ethereum, there's no Arbitrum. So like it only makes sense to be involved in the conversation for a lot of these things, and especially post in a world post EIP 4844, which the folks who we're at Prismatic Labs now at Offchain Labs are working on, it's going to impact layer twos a lot. Again, Arbitrum being one of the biggest ones. So, yeah, dude. I mean, like honestly, now more than ever, I think like development. I see that the relationship between Arbitrum and Ethereum is even closer. Definitely.
Cool. That's very interesting.
All right, I got one more question. Well, we can ask as many questions as you're here to answer, but
Sure.
One thing we like to do for our Mindmeld lives is always try to like sprinkle a little bit of alpha into them. If you have any generic alpha, that'd be great. But I know one thing that our community is interested in is the potential for like Arbitrum grants. Is there any little tidbits you can share about the future Arbitrum grants with the community today?
So like the extent to which I know is that so it definitely starts with like differentiating like Offchain Labs and the foundation. So the foundation is going to be the entity that's actually giving out grants. Offchain Labs isn't. But I mean like I'm sure that they'll do it, I guess is what I should say. and I would imagine that when they do start giving out grants, it'll very likely, I mean, I think it has to at this point be after those two AIPs pass on Snapshot and Tally. That's just my assumption because I actually don't even communicate with the foundation too directly, probably for illegal reasons. But, yeah.
People from Offchain leave Offchain to go work at the foundation. Where did those humans come from that are over there?
So I know there was one. I know one of the community managers on our end actually left from Offchain Labs to work there. But I know that there are some other like people working at the foundation that again I don't mainly interface with, just because again I think that's more of a legal thing.
Sure. But is it US based, the foundation?
No, and that's probably why. Yeah.
Right.
So I think I think it's supposed to be based in the Cayman Islands, but the people obviously they're from all over. Similar to Offchain Labs, we're all over as well. But Offchain Labs, a lot of people are from the U.S.
Interesting. Well, yeah, curious to see how that goes with the AIPs. I think that has been certainly the talk of Twitter for the past couple of weeks.
It looks like people are starting to align, but we'll see. I mean, this is kind of I think the point of having a DAO. People holding other people accountable and making sure that everything is clear and transparent. To be honest,
and it's a new relationship. You're not always going to talk the same language at first. You're going to talk past each other, and sometimes when there's a fight, it's not even about incentives being, not aligned. It's just about communication styles and respect, And I think that we are all learning that with our communities as things grow. Yeah.
I like the way I look at it is whenever there's controversy on a DAO and governance and some sort of contentious subject, I think of that as a very bullish sign, because like to me, like the worst thing to see in a DAO is like just crickets and like nothing's happening, and then you're like,
Yeah, and you
oh
can't even get quorum.
yeah,
If you're not making quorum, your proposals are not spicy enough, I guess, is the
or just
idea.
no one. You don't really. It's like it's not sham governance. It's if you don't have like anyone, if nothing's happening, then like is your DAO even real? You know. But if like things are happening and people are passionate and having debates, I mean, engagement is king in social media and in DAOs and in crypto and in everything. Like if people aren't engaged, then you're not doing it right. So kudos to you guys for stirring up some engagement.
No, listen, you know what? And not to mention, like, I'm not gonna lie, I think like the last thing you want to is to have every proposal come out to just be a unanimous, just like a yes or unanimous no. Like, you want the nuance. You want people to have the conversation, right? Some people, of course, are going to get a little spicier than other people, but that's... Humans have always been like that. You know what I mean? It's not different now that we're online.
And like the haters, I mean, they're spicy because they care, right? And that's passion
Yes.
that I really do believe you can turn into love, because there's love underneath it trying to come out. Yeah. Well, I'm very curious to see how that goes. Ultimately, the reason we onboarded to Arbitrum and decided to make that the home of Shell is the technology, primarily, which has been immaculate, and secondarily, the quality of the people on the off-chain team, which has also been great as well. So I think we're very happy. If you're going to pick an L2, certainly pick one that works, right? So
I like that.
so it's nice to be on one that works. And whatever goes beyond that, we'll see. I think Odyssey is picking up again, right?
Yeah, so there's an official date on it yet, but the hope is to definitely to bring it back at some point. But again, this was one of those things that like supposed to be like a side thing we just did to keep people kind of posted. It turns out it's one of the main things now. So who knew?
I think it's funny. The Shell story over the past year plus has been so intertwined with Arbitrum, and it's just one of those. Man, just drawing back to my comparing everything to entertainment, it's like one of those TV romances where the timing is just never right. Like, I feel like we just missed Odyssey. We just missed the DAO airdrop. So it's like,
oh yeah,
one of these days, we're gonna hit big with you guys emotionally.
Did the mint didn't count the 42,000?
Oh, so yeah, we did like this whole. Kenny, can I go over the story briefly? Yeah, we essentially got a message like, hey, where can we read about your governance? And this was like all over Telegram, and we sent along like what we had, which is basically just toucans, right? They're like, okay, thanks. I think this was either AJ or someone else on strategy. It wasn't you. But then the Excel sheet comes out with the DAO airdrop. And it's like, well, all these projects are on Arbitrum. They're building on Arbitrum. They're decentralized, and they have a treasury. And at this point, we did not have a treasury. Because there were no funds to manage.
Right.
Because we didn't have a token. So this just wasn't a step we'd taken. And we did what we could. We sort of had an emergency vote with the toucans, and we set up a treasury in about, I think, 12, 15 hours. But at that point, things were set. And we had a very, very sweet conversation back and forth with AJ, and he essentially said, look, this isn't the end. There are grants coming out. We love you guys. Stay in touch. But of course, grants have to get through the AIP, right? So we'll see what gets authorized.
It's honestly like partially why I made sure I wasn't involved in that's why I'm saying like I wasn't involved in a lot of this like the DAO process, like for specific reasons, like I have a lot of Arbitrum related bags. I mean, like, whether it's toucans and other different things. So the last thing I want to do is start putting in my input, unbiasedly.
So have you Hunter delegated your votes to someone else then?
You mean for ARB governance? No.
Yeah.
No, because I don't have any I don't have any ARB.
You don't have any ARB?
No,
check your wallet. Maybe you got like 2,000 ARB. Check your airdrop.
Well, so we need to be fair, right? So, obviously as employees, we do get certain allocations. So I don't want to start claiming things, and all of a sudden, no, I'm not
really okay.
Yeah, you got to be fair to a certain extent because
I claim mine. Definitely.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
And I know a lot of people, probably the reason they got allocations was because they onboarded for toucans once upon a time. So, by the way, anyone watching this, if you Sybil attacked the toucans or attempted to and made a bunch of wallets, go check those wallets before the airdrop expires. If you just sent your ARB ETH across, it probably won't work. But if you actually bridged for each one, I don't know. We'll see. Unofficially, of course.
Great.
Yeah. No, so I guess in short, we're just excited about this technology continuing to be as awesome as it is. This Arbitrum community being as awesome as it is, and we've done a lot of slow, expensive things that aren't very visible in the past year, building out underlying technologies. And the hope is in the time ahead for Shell that can translate into very rapidly, well, I shouldn't say very rapidly because it is Shell, but with comparative speed, building out support for tokens for NFT collections, being a place where people can come to launch things, and sort of unsiloing Shell in the popular consciousness from sort of this great isolated tower of DeFi into someplace that you come as a hub. That's really our goal. And I think the connection through the portal and all that stuff with other projects will definitely help, as well as relationships like this. Kenny, is there anything you want to throw in there? Because I think I'm butchering our mission right now.
No, you're doing great. I think it's just really cool to have Hunter as our first guest.
It's
starting
high. It's going to be really hard to top this.
I know.
Stop.
Well, no
me?
disrespect to our future guests. I'm sure they're going to be amazing. But it's great to have, Be Fresh himself.
No, listen,
flesh.
I really appreciate it, and I think for what it's worth, if you think about it, right, the idea of Arbitrum has been around since I think technically 2015 is when Ed Felton was had a
I love telling people it predates,
right? Things take time. The best things in life take time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So as far as we're concerned, non-financial advice, of course. Those who are early to Shell, I'm sure will reap the rewards. From a community perspective later on, right? I mean, to me, it's just Again,
we might have a question coming in. Reem,
okay,
get it in quickly because we're about to cut our friend loose here. He's got things to do. He's got hackathons to run.
I have dinners to make.
Dinners to make. What's
shows to watch. Tortellini, maybe little tortellini with some sauce on there.
Nice. What kind of sauce? White sauce, red sauce, olive oil.
It's a tough one. I usually make the decision while
Okay.
I'm in the kitchen chefing it up.
Game time decision. And what about show? What's the show?
I've been watching this recent one of I think it's called Smugglers. They catch people at the airport. They stop people mid-airport to pull them aside and say, hey, where are you going? And all of a sudden pull them into the room. I don't know why I like watching stuff like that. I travel a lot too, so God forbid that's me one day. I'll actually be excited.
Gary Gensler's chasing you.
Dude, it's good.
Yeah. Okay, well, Reem, I'm sorry. I think you might have missed your shot, but you know where to find him on Twitter. Be Fresh HB, by the way, on Twitter. Follow him
Yes.
if you don't.
Thank you.
And my friend, till next time.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
coming on the show.
Appreciate you guys for having me on. I look forward to watching the rest of it later on.
Hell yeah, brother.
Cheers.
Peace.
Aloha.
Aloha. I like it.
Cool.
Right on.
Well, it's just you, me, and a couple hundred other
Thousands of
sellers
our
out there.
friends.
Yeah. We won't necessarily keep you guys the full time, but I do think it's worth talking about where we're headed on the shell side. Kenny was actually just sharing with me before we went live some wireframes, which, if you're not familiar, is essentially just the layout of where the buttons are going to go without all the style and color for web design. We were going through some of these for the shell interface, and it was pretty exciting. Kenny, do you want to go over sort of what that entails, this current state?
Well, I don't want to say any details, not necessarily because we're trying to be cryptic. As you know, we try to be pretty transparent, although unfortunately there's like so many ideas that we have going on simultaneously, then there's no like repository for it. I feel like when people come, they sometimes feel like we're being cryptic, when really it's more of a dissemination problem, not so much a transparency problem. So I don't want to give details, not because I'm trying to keep it a secret, just because I don't know the details yet. We're still still iterating and ideating on it, but I think the high level concept is, we want to make the app more engaging in general. In particular, like we're thinking about the shell points page, and right now it's a fairly static page where you go there, you load it, you look at what you got. And I think like in the future, what we're trying to do, there's a lot of things we're trying to do. One is, of course, we want to make it more approachable for new users. I think, pretty soon, as we've mentioned, like the quotas are going to be removed, and it's going to be a lot easier for new people to kind of come into the shell ecosystem. And so it was almost like a feature rather than a bug, that like it was onboarding was somewhat confusing, partially because, it was a guarded launch mentality, and we didn't want just like people without thinking too hard about it to come into the ecosystem. But that's now no longer the strategic priority, or it won't be pretty soon. And we're going to try and get new people to come and test us out more and more. And so making the onboarding easier for new people is important. But also just in general, even for returning people, we want to make that shell points experience like more engaging. And so it's more clear what you can do and different ways you can earn shell points and different like opportunities that are out there. And stuff like that. So we want to make it like more fun, more exciting, and more streamlined. For new users who are trying to get onboarded, for existing users who are just complete veterans, and everyone in between. The other thing is, we're looking at high level is like on the shell scan side of things. And I think this is just in general, I think like, block explorers are sort of a missed opportunity, because I think of like, block explorers almost feel like web browsers, but before web browsers were a thing. Like if anyone was old enough to remember the original internet, like Netscape Navigator was such a big breakthrough, because all of a sudden there was like a fun, easy, and engaging way to see what the hell was on the internet in the first place, and just sort of go and explore the internet in a way that you never could before that. And I feel like block explorers are kind of like that, where Etherscan is a really, really powerful tool, and it's really kind of amazing what they've built. But the problem is like it's sort of built by developers for like developers to just sort of see and interrogate the blockchain kind of at a very low level. And I think there's a missed opportunity to have something that's more user-friendly, and not just user-friendly to like see the information, but more user-friendly is then to sort of like engage and explore what's happening. And so we're really trying to, I think about ways, like I guess the way I could describe it is it's like if anyone uses like Reddit or Wikipedia or YouTube or any of these platforms where you kind of get caught up going down like a rabbit hole and just sort of seeing like more and more stuff. You click on one thing, it leads you to another thing. And I think that would just be really a great way to explore and understand all the different parts of Shell protocol. Because right now it's a fairly simple protocol, fairly simple application. But just look at how much more complex it is today than it was, back in December. And as we add NFTs, as we add more features, the overall like protocol and what's happening is just going to get more exponentially more complicated and more like nuanced and rich. And so creating like a front end user interface and user experience that can let people explore what's happening and kind of go down fun rabbit holes is like the other like thing that we're trying to do with Shell Scanning. It's still very preliminary, very high level. It's going to take time to build this out. This is more like a strategic goal for like the long term and less of like a feature set, specific set of features that'll be like released in the next few months.
But I think this is just a small slice of the pie of what we're trying to put out in the next month plus. Really, this is one of the most exciting calendars I've ever seen for us, even more so maybe than, I don't know, it's about up there with when we did the guarded launch. NFT, AMM stuff is going to be so cool. I'm so excited for you guys to experience what this means in practicality. It's worthwhile to remember that the quota system is literally and purposefully an anti-growth mechanism. Its purpose was to keep TVL down while we were testing these very new smart contracts and getting some sense of their security, which we felt was an ethical step to not lose too much of people's money, were some exploit to be found, and also to figure out how to give out quota or, little pieces of access to these pools in a way that was fair. So I think you're going to see a very different picture of the ecosystem when that's removed, and I think it's on us and on me to make sure that the Arbitrum community understands how exactly big that is when it does get lifted. So that's going to be a fun challenge. Kenny, you are muted.
The analogy I use is it's sort of like Rock Lee in the Gara fight when he dropped those heavy weights off his ankles and wrists, which I gave that analogy, I think, on a team meeting a few days ago, and only one other person knew about it. So,
but it got a big laugh. So,
well, yeah, I don't know if you were laughing like with me or at me, but
oh no, I thought I once you laid it out, should we lay it out for the community?
I feel like I can't be the only person who watched Naruto.
Yeah, have you guys seen Naruto? I don't know if this is going to auto-translate well.
Anyway, look it up. Rock Lee versus Gara. You'll find it. I don't want to embarrass myself by explaining it.
No, I think it's charming.
That'll be us when we remove quota. We've been kind of like handicapping ourselves intentionally, and now that's finally coming to an end.
We also have the pool party, or whatever you want to call it, this effort to get additional external tokens included, which we talked about. Nominations on the last call last week. If you do want to nominate a token to be potentially included in Shell, you can find that announcement. Just scroll up in our announcements The form is still open for the moment, and the next phase of that will begin fairly shortly. As you also know, we've been trying to work with both the Collabland team and the Snapshot team, whom it would be awesome to have as guests on this podcast, by the way. So if you're in either of their Discords, tell them to come on our show. But depending on where we get with them, toucan rolls and or voting will sort of even out. And even regardless of if we get any custom implementation from Snapshot, because of the way, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it's worth going over, 2Coin obviously is a fungible token. And even though balances are stored in the ocean, it will be in a user's wallet in such a way that we can track it for the purpose of snapshot voting. So, at the very least, even if we cannot give voting power to wrapped toucans, we can give you voting power based on a combination of, one, your unwrapped toucans, and two, the 2Coin that you hold. One thing that would be a little crazier would be to even give some kind of voting power to people that hold the 2Coin Ethereum pool LP token, because obviously that LP token does have exposure to 2Coin. So perhaps, you could derive the voting power of that side of the pool. Now, is this practical and is it a good idea? I don't know. This is certainly not a promise. I'm just floating things out there. But the voting system will be back to fuller functionality quite soon, one way or another.
Yep.
Andy Tulak, calling in from Hawaii, by the way. Hello, Andy, from the Big Island, I believe. Do you feel confident that the security is in place to handle all the deposits? I think that's a good question for Kenny to answer with his usual specificity and level-headedness.
I mean, there's always a risk. I think if we end up with like $1 billion in TVL, like within a week, that'd be a little scary. If it was like 100 million, that would be a lot less scary. I don't want to make guarantees, but we spent a lot of time, and so like there's two layers to our system really. There's like the ocean, which is the part that holds all the tokens, and then there's like the AMMs and other financial primitives that are built on top of that. And the ocean is built in such a way where it assumes that any primitive that it's talking to could be malicious. And it assumes that any user interacting with it could also be malicious. So it's a very low trust. It's a very low trust system inside the ocean.
Which is necessary because the idea is that anyone can deploy smart contracts on top of the ocean, right? So it needs to be really just as trustless as the EVM to be secure.
We've put in a lot of time and effort and attention into vetting the ocean and making sure it was as solid as we possibly could. Nonetheless, we still did this, about 6 or 7 months of guard launch on the ocean with sort of continually increasing the TVL. I think we started out with just 1 million, and then it went to 5 million, and now it's around 15 million. I think as long as the growth of that system is sort of incremental, every step we can get more confident that will be good on the next step. I think also, we're a small team, and when audits cost a lot of money, and they add some value, but they're not like a silver bullet that guaranteed to save you. I think Uniswap has, all the money in the world, and they have all the audits in the world, and they still missed something in their router. I think that they recently shipped. Fortunately, they caught it before there was any problems. So yeah, I think maybe down the road, if and when the protocol is able to raise more capital, then we can invest more in auditing, and it would make sense to go back and re-audit the ocean once again. It never hurts to have like a third, fourth, fifth pair of eyes. Another thing that we're working on is looking into like alternative types of bug bounties. I believe there's a protocol called HATS that we're looking into. What's cool about HATS is they would let shell users stake to the bug bounty program, so that if a white hat finds it, they would get paid out from the amount that users are staking. And the incentive to stake is that we could actually offer shell points for people that are staking to the bug bounty. So that's something that I think would be really cool in the future. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I feel pretty confident about the ocean. If I didn't feel confident about it, I wouldn't be, we wouldn't be doing this. I feel pretty confident about the ocean. I think that the primitive is built on top of the ocean. I think for regular Proteus, we feel pretty good. That thing has been around for a while as well. And
that is reflected in the multipliers as well as far as shell points, because while it's not the only thing that multipliers do, one of the things they do is try to balance out the risk of engaging with a more experimental contract on top of the ocean. And so, for example, when we do these, whatever you want to call them, these premium pools, these auction pools, which will have a completely different structure, there will be a higher multiplier and actually probably quota in place for these pools, for the same reason that we have quota on our primary pools currently, just to manage the inflow into those contracts while they're borne out. And the same thing for time evolving Proteus, which will be making its way to us at some point.
And one of the advantages of the Proteus and the pools built on top of the ocean is that we actually have the ability to update them if we find a problem. Now there's a 2-day, 48-hour delay, so that both means that it's very difficult for us to use this update ability to take funds, because there'd be a 48-hour heads up. But it's also means that if there's an active exploit, we can't stop it in process. But if we find an exploit, we have the ability to patch it up. Whereas the ocean, that doesn't really exist. Just the nature of the ocean, we don't want it. We want it to be almost impossible to change the core logic of the ocean, because it's just so fundamental.
I think that we've got a question here from Broby Bryant, one of our longtime users, but I want to mention 5TOIC as well brought up a very cogent point, I think, which is that people want to be able to estimate their upside from putting their funds into a protocol they may not have heard of or may not be as familiar with, which has pretty novel architecture. And I agree. And I think the goal that we have is that the Tokenomics Part 2 blog post will allow people to formulate that kind of estimate. We're not going to provide, this is what we think your shell points earn you in terms of APY, because we can't make those kinds of assumptions, nor would we try, because one of the things you would need to know is, a projected market cap of the token, among other things, which obviously is for the market to figure out once the token is live. But we will provide the relative amounts of allocation, at least is the idea, to various groups. And if you know how many shell points there are being earned, you know what percent of the total token supply is going to shell point holders, then if you make your own guess about the value of the token, you can in turn figure out whether it's worth your time. Is it stoic? You know, it probably is stoic. I used to be up on my leet speak back in my Halo days, Halo 1, but I think I've fallen off. Anyway, I was getting around to Broby's question, which is, are shell points something that will continue after the full launch of the token? And the answer is yes, that's the idea. It'll be different. One thing that we've talked about is this idea of like a multi-stage airdrop, where there's an initial drop for point holders, for Shell V1 users, and then there are additional, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, the way I would say is there's like the pre-token generation event for shell points, which is kind of what we're in right now. But then, like, once the token is live, do we want to? There's like kind of like there's like a two-part question. Yeah, I'm getting killed by the sun. Sorry, guys. I have to find a better place. There's a two-part question.
I know exactly what it's like to sit there, and as the day goes on, you just get cooked.
I know it started out like great at 11.
I know, and then noon rolls around.
I need to try something.
Sorry, Kenny.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, you can like barely see your screen when you're there around midday.
So there's a two-part question once the tokens are live. Do we give it? Do we want like further growth incentives? I think the answer is going to be, in my opinion, the answer answer is yes. But you know that's something that will require community buy-in, of course. The second thing is, if we do have growth incentives, how do we structure them? You know, do we want to just like have sort of go like ditch shell points and go to vanilla like liquidity mining, or do we want to keep shell points and just sort of use shell points to calculate, like have just sort of like a continual round of new like airdrops that are based off of like shell points that people earn? I think I'm pretty strongly. My fairly strong opinion is that we should have continual airdrops based off of shell points, and the reason for that is because like the reason why we have shell points in the first place is because calculating these rewards on chain is like really difficult and kind of impossible, really, and that's why we did the shell points in the first place, is because like we wanted to use off-chain computation and off-chain information to calculate rewards. And so if we just do regular liquidity mining, it all has to be on-chain. And so if it's all on-chain, then you don't get like we lose a lot of the like cool features of shell points and how they're calculated. And so, yeah, my opinion is like post token generation event, we should keep using shell points to calculate rewards and incentives, but just have like a regular cadence, like maybe every week, every 2 weeks, every month. We can figure out like what cadence makes sense. I think, you know, that's kind of an open question, is like what's the right cadence to do. You know, I think every day probably would just be a lot of work to operationalize. You know, every year is like just too long. So somewhere between 1 day and 1 year would be like the cadence, and you know, we could figure it out. I think it has to be, you know, not so long that like people that people lose interest, but it can't be so. It has to be long enough where you know it kind of feels a little bit competitive, you know, day to day, week to week.
Another thing Stoic brings up, the idea of encouraging people to build on the ocean or deploy what they have on the ocean. This is another thing we were talking about a lot before we launched, the idea of the ocean as this sort of bedrock on which a whole community of builders can participate. It is difficult to encourage people to build on a smart contract that they would need to start from the ground up to familiarize themselves with. There are a few ways to do that. I think the most common way is to give people money. Another way is to show them the value of the technology in such a way that it's pretty much irresistible, even if it's not what they're familiar with. The upsides are great enough that that you want to do it. And I think the big upside with the ocean, as Kenny has sort of talked about lately, is the idea that you get instant access to everything else on there. All the liquidity, all the other primitives, you just sort of plug into this network. Which means even if the ocean is already perfect, its value will increase as the number of users, projects, and funds increase. So it's just sort of like getting to that. It's kind of like getting something hot enough to burn under its own heat. You know, we've got to figure out what the kindling is that gets that going. And it's an ongoing question. There's a lot, obviously, going on out there that we can't attend. You know, we can't be everywhere at once. As Kenny said, we're a small team. And to a large degree, I think we rely on the community as well to spread the word about the protocol. And there are things we can do to make it easier. I think docs that communicate the upsides of the ocean simply in a way that makes it easy for devs to buy in and build on it are crucial. That's something we've been working on. I know we can be better with that. And I won't say, we know exactly what to do to achieve that. But we're working on it. It's important.
My philosophy is that the best sales pitch for building on the ocean is to point to things like TVL, volume, and users, and all that. Now, if that's all you have, then that's not enough. You got to do more. But if you don't have that, it's a really hard pitch to make, I've learned. And if you do have that, it becomes a much easier pitch to make. And so I think in the short term, our goal is just to build our own internal shell ecosystem out, which is sort of like the phase, that's kind of happening once we remove quotas. And then you'll see a lot more developer activity after that. And in addition to that, like one thing we're experimenting with and kind of learning by doing is things like developer workshops. We had our first one in East Denver. It was a great learning experience for us. It was pretty well received. And as I think we being the core team, build out more examples of what you can build on top of the ocean, and there's real world data we can point to of how these examples are like succeeding on our own protocol. I think it'll become very compelling for people to follow our lead and start building on the ocean themselves to explore their own ideas and their own protocols.
Entirely. That's been a lot. It's been a big call. Is there anything else you want to go over with the fam before we wrap this one up? Sir Kensington?
Nothing comes to mind.
I think we get you out of the sun and we get back to building.
Yeah, I'll try and find a place inside that I can do this call next
This
week.
is picturesque, I will say. Maybe I'll have to be outside next.
It keeps cutting out. I'm told it's not cutting out for me. I'm seeing myself just fine. Obviously,
it's not cutting out for me either. I can see it, but I guess the proof will be in the pudding when we reply. Cool. Well, let's see. Oh, a question from Reem. It only took him 40 minutes. Hi, Reem. Is other engagements, voting, using boosters, will have influence on token allocation? So voting, we have announced, we did announce this on Twitter, will not have any impact on token allocation. I am not a fan of paying people to vote, or whatever you want to call it, incentivizing voting. I think people should vote out of their own interests. And I think that leads to more informed voting. And I also don't want to punish people for not being there for every silly vote that we host, because a lot of the toucan votes are pretty irreverent. And as far as using boosters, well, obviously, using a booster will increase your shell points, which in turn will increase your allocation, presumably. So in that sense, yes. However, will there be like an action checklist that we use to determine token allocations? No. That is not the way we want to do things. So don't feel compelled to, make arbitrary swaps or own, every NFT in a collection or anything like that, just for the sake of trying to anticipate some rigid airdrop requirement. That's not the way we want to do things. And hopefully there will be more public clarity about that with tokenomics part 2. Good question. Thank you.
I think in general, the problem with like incentivizing like things like voting or activating boosters and stuff beyond shell points is part of what we try to do with these like boosters and with voting, with a lot of what the stuff we experiment with. We're trying to just see like what you guys care about and what gets people motivated and interested. And if we create a system where like voting gets you shell points or whatever, or gets you shell tokens, then we don't really know if like these are votes that people care about or are relevant to people, because we're not sure, like, are they voting because this is something that they're passionate about, or are they voting just because like they think they're going to get an airdrop for it? And so yeah, we don't want to corrupt that signal.
Well put. Cool. Well, hey, if you haven't gotten your role yet, go ahead and get your Mindmeld video melder role in the Mindmeld role channel, right above the Mindmeld chat channel. It is just for fun, but who knows? It may lead to a special channel or something like that in the future. Quick question: will there ever be a use case for the rare toucans or the Art of Shell NFT? Absolutely, yes. Can I say what that is on this call? No. Does that mean we don't know? No. However, the time is not now to get into that. But I will say, whenever, kind of like what we were saying about the toucans with Hunter, the community makes things real in that it creates value by valuing things. And in the case of the rare toucans and the Art of Shell NFTs, both of those are valued, and resultantly, it's very important to us to recognize that mechanically in some way. So,
I think one hint we can give is they probably won't be valued in the same way. I know we're thinking about doing IRL events, and so that's some component can be tied to the Shell Art NFTs. And as far as the rare toucans, there's a lot of toucan lore has been left unsaid.
Correct. The toucans are not exactly what they appear, or at least there's a lot lurking beneath. Stoic asks about the toucan tablets. Let's see what autumn brings. I don't know. We might get a little October surprise. They say.
We're not necessarily trying to be coy just for the sake of being coy. We also like.
I'm being coy.
That's true, but from my angle, like, we have like only so many hours in a day. 24 if we stay up all night, which we won't, and don't eat, which we will. And so every hour we spend building out like toucan lore like features is an hour that we're not like, building out other features. And the toucan lore features is something that we are really stoked on. But we got a couple other like things on our roadmap to sort of boxes that we got to check along the way. And But yeah, we've had these ideas for like almost, well, I want to say a year now because the toucans are only a year old. But let's say probably back in like last summer, like early like June, July, we were already like we already cooked up some cool ideas, and we're some of the broke ones booty items maybe part of it. We don't know. You didn't hear that from us.
Hopefully no one's recording this. Okay. Great. Well, Shell fans, Shellers, friends, countrymen, it's been a pleasure. Kenny, thanks for doing this. Again, if you want a guest, go harass them, tell them to come on the Mindmeld Live. Sounds good coming from you. Or let us know and we can go try and track them down. But yeah, looking forward to having a lot more to talk about. And as the consensus seems to be, getting Shell on people's minds out there in the Twitterverse. So we'll keep working on it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Cairo.
Thank you.
Aloha.
And aloha. Let's see.